make that announcement. And do you know what Ryan is here for?
I am not sure.
Okay, well, we'll find out. Okay.
Barry, do you know?
I don't.
Okay.
We'll make that announcement. And do you know what Ryan is here for?
I am not sure.
Okay, well, we'll find out. Okay.
Barry, do you know?
I don't know.
Dan, I have Scott Waltz on as well.
Okay. Thank you, Jen. So Larry, we could go with, I assume Scott's here for those business items under 4. We can move those up and take care of those too, couldn't we, before the other public hearings?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
We'll go with Tom's item first, and then Scott's. I'm not sure what Ryan's here for. We'll have to find out. But so, Dan, how many commission members do we have so far? I'm only counting 3, including myself.
Well, no, we have Nancy and we have Sean Carlson, who's a new member.
All
So
right.
that gives us 5.
Yeah, they're not showing up on my screen, so.
And Marcus Locker is here too. You might have to scroll if you move your cursor to the bottom or top. You can scroll through those.
Hey, Dan, this is Scott Walls.
Yes, hello,
Um,
Scott.
How are you doing today? I heard you talking about, I also have the Lee Carlson Rock Ridge. I'm part of that on the agenda
Okay.
too.
Thank you. I don't know if you have an agenda in front of you, Scott, but we're going to go with item E first because Tom was on before you. But then we'll do
Okay.
your 3 items: Rock Ridge, Lake Forest, and you must have Laker Island storage too. Is that right?
Yep. And then
All
I'm
right.
also part of the Boys and Girls Club one. So you can just let me go however order you want.
All right. So we'll basically move everything up. Items A and B will handle last. So,
Sounds good.
all right.
Thank you.
So I have 5:30, Larry. How about you?
You can start.
All right, so let's do that. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Thank you for joining us. It's still sunny out. Had to check. And thanks for meeting tonight. So first thing I will need to do is read the online meeting statute here. So pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D-021, it is hereby found necessary that in-person meetings of the Planning Commission are not practical or prudent due to the COVID-19 health pandemic and the peacetime emergency declared by Governor Walz. Therefore, today's meeting is being held through telephone and other electronic means without members of the public or city officials present at the regular physical location. These proceedings are being live streamed through YouTube to meet the requirements of Minnesota Statute 13D-021. So again, we're doing this by Zoom, and of course, we'd ask that unless you're actually speaking, you keep your yourself on mute, and keeps the echoes down. Each time you speak, especially meeting participants, please identify yourself. And then in addition, when a commission member makes a motion, would you please state your name when you make or second a motion? I'll call a roll call vote for each action item, and those who are wishing to speak on an issue should raise their hand. I know there's an icon for that. I can't see everybody on the screen, so you can try physically raising your hand, but I can only see about 3 people. So I think you can also break in as necessary. So we'll try to hear all comments. So with that, we're going to start the meeting. I'm going to reorder agenda items here. Item E, we're going to handle first. And we've got Tom Trusden on the line for that. And then we'll go item C, D, and under business A and B, we've got Scott here for Meadowland for those, and then we'll cover A, B in the end. So that's the order tonight. Hopefully we won't get too confusing. With that, I need to call for approval of the minutes of the last meeting. Do I hear a motion?
And this is Liz. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the prior meeting.
All right, thank you. And a second?
Second by Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy. So with that, I need to call roll call vote, of course. So Eric, how do you vote? And you need to take yourself off mute.
Aye.
Thank you. And Liz?
Aye.
Thank you. Nancy?
Aye.
Marcus?
Aye.
Okay. And Chris?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Did I catch everybody?
Dan, you forgot Sean Carlson, who's a new planning commissioner.
Thank you. Sean, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. So minutes, approval of the minutes passes. So thank you. And let's move on then to item E. Tom, first of all, what we'll do here, the way this works is I will call on Larry to give us a synopsis of the issue. Then Tom, if you have any comments or anyone else from the public can provide comment, and then we'll have the commissioners ask questions, and then we'll consider the questions. So Larry, could you fill us in on what's going on here?
Yes. Artisan Properties has requested a variance to allow 2 parking spaces instead of 9 spaces to convert a car wash into an office building at 600 Washington Avenue. The building is 1,176 square feet and would generally require 9 parking spaces. The site is large enough to provide 2 parking spaces on site. If the variance is granted, consideration should be given to the following 2 conditions. First, that the building not exceed 1,176 square feet and that at least 2 on-site parking spaces be provided. These are the following findings that should also be considered with regard to this variance. 1, the variance is in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance, as it will allow a commercial use in a commercial district. 2, the variance is consistent with the comprehensive plan, as it will allow a use that is permitted in the current zoning district. 3, the variance will put the property to use in a reasonable manner, as this is an existing structure that will be modified to make it a commercial office space, and the customers will utilize public parking spaces. 4, the circumstances are unique to the property, as the existing 1,176 square foot car wash will be converted into an office building. And 5, the variance will maintain the essential character of the locality, as it will allow a commercial use with some parking to serve its needs, and like other businesses in the area, will utilize public parking. And staff recommends approval of this variance.
Thank you, Larry. Tom, would you care to jump in at this point and ask, add anything to that?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited about converting this into an office building and bringing some business to downtown Washington Avenue there. You can kind of see the aerial view there. And like Larry said, I mean, we could squeeze in 2 parking spots, but yeah, I really don't know what else to do there. So I'm hoping that you guys can let me slide on this with the variance.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Questions from for either Tom or Larry from the planning commissioners? And by the way, Sean, you're making yourself useful already. This Zoom tip, I hadn't seen that before. You can press and hold your space bar to temporarily unmute to talk. I'm going to remember that one.
Dan, this is Liz. I have a question for Larry.
Yes, please, Liz.
Okay, in looking at the aerial view and then looking at the square footage, Larry, I see you recommend the building no larger than 1,176 square feet. Is that correct?
That is correct. We don't want any additions on this building, obviously.
Okay, and I'm looking at the building aerial view right now. It looks as if there's 5 cars. Is that section of the property, am I
That
misunderstanding
is
it?
not part of the property. The property is just the highlighted triangle.
Thank you. I
Okay.
misunderstood that.
Yep.
Yeah, this is Nancy. I have a question.
Please go ahead, Nancy.
Is the nature of the business likely to have a lot of cars there? I mean, what is the anticipated number of parking spaces needed at any given time during the operating hours of the business?
If I can chime in, there won't be many vehicles there. basically what I'm planning to do there is have a sports performance rehab center. So athletes doing rehab, kind of a return to sport, advanced rehab, strength and conditioning type stuff. And it's just me right now as the only clinician there. So I'm really only going to be working with probably, one or two people at a time. That's what I anticipate at this moment, but.
This is Sean. I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Sean.
I'm not sure it's clear to me on this diagram or the maps, how much public parking space is available right near that building, or is it all across the street or down the street?
Sean, this is Larry. The public parking would be the parking that's available on the street, which would be across Main Street from this. And then there's also a public parking lot behind the businesses on Washington Avenue. Again, that would be across the street, across Main Street. It would be to the northeast of this. But it's basically where all the businesses have public parking on North Washington Avenue.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments? I guess this is a public hearing, so I forgot to follow the formality of opening it. So, but with no more comments or questions, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for a motion on this.
I had one more question for Larry.
Oh, go and we're not that formal, so go ahead, Nancy.
Yeah, Larry, do you have any letters or input from surrounding businesses commenting on this?
I have no comments on this.
Yep. And also during the closed portion of the public hearing, commissioners can continue to ask questions. So, okay, thank you. And Larry, just to be clear, your recommendation is to allow this with the conditions that you set forth, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right.
Will the parking space be a handicap space? Does it need to be?
That is a question for our building official to answer.
And Priscilla's not here, correct?
That would be Nate Weber.
Oh, Nate, okay. And Nate's not here either, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we can't answer your question at this time, Marcus.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the potential clients that
Yep.
come in for rehab.
Yep. So,
I would entertain a motion to accept the variance.
and this is Nancy, correct?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So we have a motion from Nancy to grant the variance. Do I hear a second?
So moved.
And is that Marcus?
Yes.
Thank you, Marcus. So we have a motion and a second. So any further discussion on this variance? Okay, with that, I'm going to call the question. Nancy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. It is possible to make a motion and then not vote for it, so I do have to call the roll. Thank you. Eric?
Aye.
Thank you. Chris?
Aye.
Thank you. Liz?
Aye.
Thank you. Marcus?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Thank you. And I'll vote aye also, so the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Tom, you get your, now the way this works is that this will come up to the Community Development Committee meeting. That's the day before the City Council meeting. What day is the Community Development Committee meeting again, Larry?
March 8th.
So that'll be March 8th at 5 p.m. and that will be a Zoom meeting. And then the committee will make a recommendation to the full council meeting on March 9th, which will be at 5 p.m. And so that's the next step. And those two groups need to approve this before it's granted then. Okay, Tom?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you. All right, and you're welcome to come to any of those meetings, by the way. So they are public meetings, and sir are welcome to join in. So thank you again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, I'm going to move on and open a public hearing to give consideration to preliminary and final plat approval of the BGC Thrift Division at 1305 US Highway 10 West, which is the Boys and Girls Club Thrift Store of Detroit Lakes. Larry, can you give us the information on this?
Yes. Now, this is a 3-lot plat of the former Kmart property. So it would include a lot for a proposed Aldi's grocery store. It would include a lot for the Boys and Girls Club thrift store, and then a 3rd lot for the former Sears building. In order to approve this plat, we need to give it preliminary and final plat approval, which is what they're requesting. One thing that we would want if we go to final plat approval is that we would need to have evidence that they have a cross-access easement for all of these lots, because this plat would landlock the Sears property if it didn't have the cross-access easement. They currently have a cross-access easement on it, but since there would be a new owner introduced, they would need to revise that cross-access easement so it covers all of the properties. But that would be the only condition that I would recommend for final plat approval.
And would you be looking for that before the city council meeting?
We would be, no, that needs to come before we would sign off on the final plat.
Okay, so we could approve all this and then, but it wouldn't take effect. It wouldn't take effect until we saw that easement, correct?
Right, it would be subject to seeing that easement.
Very good, thank you. At this point, Scott or I don't see anyone else here, but Scott, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I don't. Actually, I believe there should be somebody here from the engineers representing all these. I thought they were going to be here. So I didn't prepare this plat, but I can speak to Larry's question about the cross access. The thrift store asked me to be here on their behalf. That what they were going to do is for lots 1 and 2 have a cross access and parking easement across the entire property, because they're probably going to, in accord with the parking variance, they'll need to have some cross parking easements and everything. So both lots 1 and 2 for all the areas that you can park and drive, they're just going to have a cross easement across, I'm sorry, 2 and 3, lots 2 and 3.
Okay.
Jen, could you put Ryan Anderson on as a panelist? I think he might be here for this.
I just promoted him.
Okay.
I just promoted him.
Okay, Ryan, do you have anything to say about the Boys and Girls Club thrift plat?
I do not. Hopefully I am on now. It just loaded up on my screen. Let me know if you can hear me all right. No,
Yes.
I think you have it covered.
Okay, so Ryan, Dan Winter, the chair here, just to make sure. So you did hear Larry's presentation then, correct?
Correct. Yep. Absolutely. Sounds like the only recommendation of a condition would be a cross access between the Boys and Girls Club lot and the Sears lot, and revised, agreements to ensure it has access.
Yep.
And we would need that prior to signing off. So not before council necessarily, but before it would be signed and recorded. Yep. So that is completely in agreement, and we are in favor of that.
All right, very good. Any other public comment on this issue? Oh, and then questions from the Planning Commission? Okay, hearing no questions, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion on this final plat, preliminary and final plat approval. We can do both at the same time, Larry?
We can, it's a variance from our procedure, but we can do that.
Okay, I would be looking for a motion on that preliminary and final plat approval.
Eric, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Eric. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that. Chris?
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chris. So we have a motion and a second to approve the preliminary and final plat. Any further discussion on that from the Planning Commission?
Dan, can I just interrupt?
Yes,
Was that motion with the cross access easement as the condition? Just for
Yeah.
clarification.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're accepting Larry's recommendation is what we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Any further, then thank you, Jen. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing nothing further on that, I'm going to call the roll. The motion is to approve the preliminary and final plat. Nancy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Eric, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Chris, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Liz, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Marcus, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. And Sean, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. And Ryan, again, just to be clear, this will then go with the recommend and motion passes. Dan Winter votes aye also. So this motion, again, this recommendation will go to the Community Development Committee meeting. Larry already gave the date, and then to the City Council for final approval. So, and again, you're welcome to come to any of those meetings. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you. So moving on, that was item C. So we're going to move to item D. Okay, which is opening a public hearing to give consideration to the preliminary plat of Rock Ridge in the city's 2-mile extraterritorial area. And before we start, I just can't help commenting that, by the way, Rock Ridge is the fictional town in Blazing Saddles. So I got a kick out of that. Anyway, Larry, could you give us the background information on this, please?
Yes. This is a 4-lot plat in the city's 2-mile extraterritorial area. The recommendation is for approval of the preliminary plat, subject to the owner paying the park dedication fee of $540. 2, that the owner provide a signed road agreement from the township or a letter from the township stating that the road issue does not require a road agreement. And 3, that the owner provide documentation that the property is zoned residential. And with those conditions, we recommend preliminary approval.
Thank you, Larry. Anything you want to add to that, Scott? Okay, I'm not hearing from Scott. So go ahead.
Yep, that covers it. The road is currently maintained by the township all the way just to the north of this. There's a house up there and they turn around in that property there, but we can certainly contact the township and get the letter. Otherwise, yeah, everything looks great.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any questions for Scott or Larry from the Planning Commission?
Dan, this is Liz.
Yes, thank you, Liz. Go ahead.
And I don't want to assume, so I'm going to ask Larry or Jen this question. We received no public comments on any of the public hearing matters. Are you going to bring those forward, or do we have to ask each time?
No, we will bring those forward if there are any comments from the public.
Thank you, Larry.
Good question, Liz. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing, and I would entertain a motion to again, on the preliminary plat.
This is Nancy. I would move to accept the preliminary plat.
Thank you, Nancy. Do I hear a second?
This is Liz. I'll second the motion to accept the preliminary plat of Rock Ridge.
Thank you, Liz. I will, any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I'm going to call the vote. This time I'm going to start with Sean. How do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Marcus?
Aye.
Liz?
Aye.
Very good. Chris?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
And Dan votes aye also, so the motion passes and we are accepting the preliminary plat to Rock Ridge. So we will take that forward. We're going to move down to the business portion of the meeting. Scott has two more plats that we're looking at. These are not public hearings, so we can just go into a process. Will be very similar, of course. Larry, we have consideration to a final plat approving the Lake Forest 8th edition. Can you fill us in on that, please?
Yes, Lake Forest 8th edition is a 23-lot residential subdivision. The park dedication was completed earlier, and as you know, there's been work going on, so South Shore Park is starting to have some amenities there, and more work will be done this summer. The preliminary plat was approved as part of Lake Forest 7th edition. The plat meets the requirements of the subdivision ordinance, and I'm recommending final plat approval.
Thank you, Larry. Any questions for Larry? Or comments from Scott first, I guess. Scott, if you're there, you're still muted. You don't have to. Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I have no comments.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Any other public comments on this? Okay. At this point, questions from the Planning Commission?
Yeah, this is Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yeah, is this got a road that's going to go out and access 270th? So
Yes,
a
it does.
second entry into that development?
Yes, it's down on the south end of the plat.
Okay. And that road is not built yet, is it?
It is not.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Could it be possible that you identify that on the screen where that road would be?
Right here. Can you see that?
Oh, where your hand is? Okay.
Where the hand is.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the final plat for the Lake Forest 8th edition. This is Liz.
Thank you, Liz. And so we have a motion on the table. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that. This is Chris.
Thank you, Chris. So any further discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to call the question. Let's start with Chris this time. How do you vote?
Aye.
Very good. Liz?
Aye.
Thank you. Marcus?
Aye.
Thank you. Sean?
Aye.
Thank you. Nancy?
Aye.
Thank you. Eric?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye also. So we have approval of the final plat for Lake Forest 8th edition. Thank you. Moving down to item B under business is consideration to final plat approval of Laker Island Storage, Common Interest Community number 89, Phase 2. Larry, please fill us in on this.
Yes, this is a common interest community, number 89, Laker Island Storage. The original plat had 96 units. However, some of the multiple units in this plat have been changed to single storage units. So the total plat has 87 rental units. And this is still in in line and in conjunction with the preliminary plat, and I would recommend approval.
Thank you, Larry. Any comment from the public attendees on this issue? Okay, hearing none. Questions from the Planning Commission? And hearing none, I would entertain a motion on this.
This is Eric. I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Eric. Motion to approve.
This is Liz. I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Liz. Let's call the question. Nancy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye. Eric?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Thank you. Liz?
Aye.
Marcus?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So the motion is approved and final plat is approved. Okay, well, with that, we have 2 items left on the agenda. Am I correct on that?
You are
A and
correct.
B? Thank you. So let's go with A. I have to think if anybody's online for this, it would be regarding that. So Larry, would you fill us in on item A, which is amending the zoning ordinance?
Yes, this is an amendment to the zoning ordinance to clarify regulations relative to fences. So the proposed amendments will clarify our definitions of lot lines, and front and rear yards. The amendment will also clarify the setback requirements, so hopefully people will be able to more clearly know where fences can be 6 feet high and where they have to be lowered to 3 feet high or 4 feet high if it's a chain link fence. One thing that's good about this new ordinance is that we've included some graphics to help people visualize the ordinance requirements. And I'm sure you have all read through every section of the ordinance change and you're ready to take action.
We might surprise you, Larry. So any comments from the public on this? Okay, I'm not hearing any public input on it.
Hold on, Dan, I have someone that just raised their hand.
Very good.
Mr. Wayne Taylor.
Oh, very good. Has he joined us yet?
Just promoted him, so he should be able to speak up.
Okay, I see him on now. Welcome, Wayne. You have the floor for anything you wish to say. Just remember to unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted now.
You are. I can hear you.
I just wonder that the height of the fence, is that on one side or is that on both sides? And if they put a 3-foot fence on the lake side, can they put 12-foot trees behind that 3-foot fence?
We do not regulate trees or shrubbery.
How about the height of either side of the fence? If someone raises their land 2 feet and puts a fence on it and it's 6 feet on there.
If a fence is within 3 feet of a property line, the height is measured from the lowest point of ground in that 3-foot area. If it's further than 3 feet away, then it's measured from the base, from where the ground is, where it joins the fence. And that's to get away from the issue where there's a big topographical difference along a property line so that somebody doesn't build up their lot and create a problem.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And any questions from the Planning Commission at this point?
Yeah, this is Nancy. I've got a question.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, item number 2, as far as fences cannot be constructed from previously used materials, how does that apply to recycled things? Or like different kinds of natural fence posts? I need an explanation of that.
The intent wasn't to restrict people from using fence materials that are made from recycled materials. It's to prevent people from using tar paper or sheet metal or things that are not fence materials for making fences. We had somebody that took plastic bins and plastic jugs and tried to make a fence out of it. And that's the kind of thing we're trying to avoid. So if we have a problem with that, or we start running into issues with that, we'll have to tweak that language. But I think our interpretation will be that if somebody comes in with a composite material of boards that's made from recycled material, that's going to be acceptable.
I just think that statement is kind of unclear, and I wonder.
We've struggled with that, and the attorney and I have gone back and forth on that language. So it's a good question. Charlie, do you have any input on that one?
The earlier draft that we had of this had some language in there about, material not intended for fences. And we thought that was a little too vague, just because, what someone's intent is could be different from somebody else's intent. So what we're getting at here is, we don't want the things that Larry described. I do acknowledge that, previously used materials, certainly could be construed to say, well, I'm not going to be able to build my fence out of an old fence, perhaps. That would be correct. I don't think that language would prevent people from utilizing deck boards or whatever that was, or fencing boards that were made from recycled materials, because those would be a new product at the time. At least that's how I would construe it. If you think that's an issue, I suppose one of the things that we could get to would be add in the word recycling. But, again, what is one person's recycling and another person's recycling then starts to get us into a little bit of a gray area. Who gets to recycle it? So I just soon not go there.
So what about a fence that, in the interest of not having so much material be used and in the interest of recycling, because it's good for the environment, if somebody were to buy a fence from another homeowner that was a good fence, there's nothing wrong with it, it would fit the materials list, and move it over to their property, would that not be allowed?
Well, I guess it would kind of depend upon how Priscilla wants to construe that when or Nathan, when they're seeing the fence go up. And so the short answer is it certainly could be prohibited under that language.
Is there some language you'd like to see instead, Nancy?
Nothing comes to mind, but I'm trying to think of some other, ordinances that we've done where there was some kind of a statement as to something at the discretion of the building inspector, or
well,
I don't know the right term as far as that goes.
Everything is interpreted in the discretion of the building inspector. The issue of question comes into enforcement. Again, discretion in the field, just like when police officers have discretion in the field. That
Right.
makes sense.
Nancy,
But, the danger I see with language that is, it's real hard to come up with language that's going to address the bad actors and not affect the people who are utilizing recycled material out of the good intent.
Right. I just like to have things real clear so that we don't end up having somebody put up something and then we end up having to have them take it down, you know what I mean? So that it,
My preference is to have the ordinance written so that it is clear and that there isn't a lot of guesswork involved, either for the homeowner or for the city staff. But unfortunately, there are some things that don't lend themselves to the precise definition. And I'm not sure if this isn't one of them because of the two things that you brought up. Recycled materials, which I think we would accept because they're made to be that way. They're made to be used that way. And the other one is if there's a perfectly good fence and you're just going to rebuild it and, you know, rebuild parts of it, I think that can be okay too, but some people can do it just fine and other people who try to do the same thing make a hash out of it. You know, it's kind of like hanging Christmas lights. Some people can hang up a bunch and it looks great, and I've had neighbors that if they hang up one string, it looks just awful because they just don't have the knack for it. So I'm not
Same for
sure.
new materials
I agree
too.
that it would be nice to have it defined clearly, but I'm not sure if we can get there in a reasonable length of ordinance on that particular issue.
This is John. I have a question. Have you guys seen language in other municipal, excuse me, ordinances from other cities that that is similar to this type of regulation that might have some language? I mean, is there any precedents or other examples available?
I think we're in the lead on this one. I have not seen anything specifically about this.
Yeah, again, you know, the danger comes in not in the discretion of the building inspector, but the danger comes in the other way. If you have language in there that has, we will allow you to use repurposed material or recycled material or all of that, you know, then essentially we have an ordinance that will make it very difficult to prohibit somebody from having recycled milk jugs as their fence because they're all recycled materials.
Yeah.
So from an enforcement standpoint, you know, again, we don't get to enforcement of these issues unless there's a problem. And realistically, having someone use a fence that is perfectly good, goes in the ground, no one's going to know that it wasn't purchased at Menards. I mean, you know, we're not going to have a problem if it's a perfectly good fence.
Yeah, I'm thinking the way that it's written, we're okay on the recycled materials because we're not concerned about the raw materials that go into a new fence. You know, the fence is new. It's just that the material used to manufacture it is from a source that would be termed recyclable, but the fence is new. It hasn't been previously used for anything else. And I'm thinking we actually want to take and restrict people from taking an old fence from somewhere and putting it on their property. There would be very, very few instances I can think of where a fence that had been up for any amount of time would be useful yet. I could see that happening on an exception basis, but it would be pretty rare.
yeah, thank you. I read it and it seemed vague to me. And so I just wanted to have a discussion on it to get a feel for how it was going to be enforced. Thank you.
Yep. But yeah, Charlie's exactly right. If it looks fine and nobody complains about it, it's going to not be a problem. So, yep. Okay. Any other questions or comments on this?
Dan, this is Liz. I do have a question regarding safety and swimming. I noticed that that's not in or when we have a swimming pool. And I happen to have one down the street from me, and I've seen other city ordinances where they speak and call out fencing, either by state statute or by a specific language within the ordinance.
State statute used to require a 5-foot high fence around pools and a self-closing gate, but They no longer have that requirement.
So there is no state statute on that one for Minnesota.
No.
That's correct. And, one of the issues is to some degree, again, well, from a liability perspective, if we start to regulate something like that, then we assume the duty to regulate that. And I think you might end up with a issue with our insurer if we are going to assume the duty to require and license fences around pools.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
I had, this is Sean, I have one question under section 3F6, I think it was E. It says all posts or similar supporting instruments used in the construction of fences shall be faced inward toward the property being fenced. So that means no exposed posts. You can't have like a 4x4 post and the fencing in between and then a 4x4 post, or how does that, I'm not sure the application of that.
Well, typically, if there is a side to a fence that is not desirable, that needs to be faced towards the homeowner. If it's the type of fence that looks the same on both sides because it's got the 4x4 posts and then the fence panels in between there, so it looks the same from both sides, then there's no issue.
Again, that's kind of the good neighbor provision, you don't want to have the ugly side of your fence facing your neighbors.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Again, it's one of those where I think it leaves it a little bit open to interpretation. I don't know if there would be value in adding something like on a fence where the two sides differ from each other or something like that, but perhaps that's just an enforcement thing as well.
Okay. I'm not hearing any, I guess, groundswell for further specificity. So
I put in the chat that I felt like that sentence that Nancy brought up should just be removed, that because I believe that the previous sentence basically covers it when you're talking about what the material should be made of.
okay.
If the material is made for the purpose of a fence, then I don't think we need to have the second sentence there.
So it's redundant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's redundant because I think from an enforcement mechanism, Marcus, what is substantial material reasonably suitable? I think that, that's a good idea. You got to make it out of fence material. But it still doesn't prohibit someone from getting some crappy old fence from someplace, out on the farm and, installing it in their property. Again, what we're trying to do by this is to make peace with the neighbors to some degree. And I think it's a good idea to have at least some mechanism by which you can address those circumstances, because those are the ones that cause the issues.
This is Sean. I have a kind of a follow-on question to that, and in relationship to this, if a resident were to take new posts and say chicken wire and create a fence out of that, is there anything in here that prevents them from doing that from a specificity perspective? I don't see anything that says you have to use wood or chain link only. It specifies the type and size of the chain link, but maybe I'm missing it as well.
Larry or Charlie, can you answer that one?
There's a
I don't
lot
see
of-
anything in here that prohibits, chain link or chicken wire. I mean, barbed wire is not permitted. So that's true. We don't really specify in any more detail other than the sentence that Marcus read as to what, the materials have to be. You just have to have new chicken wire.
I think we want to keep that sentence in there because we can sit here and reasonably discuss this and think that there's not any problem, but we're dealing with people who aren't necessarily as reasonable as you guys are. So.
Right, Larry, this is Sean again. I think I'm good either way with that sentence being in there. I guess I'm more questioning what's the intent of this? Because it sounds to me like the intent of having the sentence in there is so that we have nice looking, clean, well-maintained fences. And it sounds to me like we could have that, we could technically violate that with new materials as easily as we could with reused materials. It looks like Kelsey has something to say.
Okay, Kelsey?
Thanks, Chairman. Sure, I'll weigh into this too. I was involved in some of these discussions with Charlie and Larry, and I kind of see Marcus's point. I think that was the same question I asked. Is it redundant? But then I also see the counter argument that we need a little more specificity to this. Now, one of the things I would throw out there now, this is much more of a regulation, but we could specifically state what are approved materials. I mean, you could specifically state that it has to be, I'm looking at one other sample, it has to be stone, brick, finished wood, vinyl, metal, or chain link. Obviously, it comes with challenges when you specifically state what approved materials are, because there's always a chance you're going to, miss something, but something to think about. I mean, we're struggling a little bit to say what we want to exclude. One way to get around that is specifically state what is approved.
This is Sean. I have a question related to that. Could you specify, you say something like, stone, wood, brick, et cetera, or materials of like finish and reasonable construction or something to that effect, so that you can, I'm asking.
John, I mean, again, that open end though at the end of the sentence creates, essentially puts us back in the soup, with arguing about what is or isn't those materials.
It's what attorneys call weasel words.
Right. I guess I'm struggling not so much with the words as the intent. Are the words that we put on the paper accomplishing the intent of this piece of the ordinance? And I'm not, maybe I'm just not clear on what the intent is. So maybe you can help me understand what is our intent here? And are we meeting that with the words that we put in this proposed ordinance?
So
Who wants
Larry,
to take it?
Yeah. I think I know what the intent is, but go ahead.
The intent is to hopefully end up with good fences that make good neighbors instead of people piling up garbage or slabs of wood that they've, cut on the farm or something, and creating fences that make their neighbors very unhappy. So I think that this language accomplishes that by saying they can't use previously used materials and they have to use substantial materials that are reasonably suitable to the purpose. I think Kelsey's thoughts are okay, and we could probably go to something like that and be very specific. That could work as well.
Yeah. And again, the intent really of this whole thing, we have people who think that fences are great. We have people who think that fences are terrible. What you're really trying to do with this kind of ordinance, why does the city have any interest in regulating fences between property owners at all? That's a good question. And I think the short answer is because we have to. Not because we want to. We get, these things create the neighbor disturbances. And so what we're trying to do is establish some reasonable rules that, can kind of cut the baby, if you will, or whatever, and make people get along. Now, the only thing I ask is that if, when we're drafting an ordinance, the end game of enforcement of this comes to the city attorney's office, and we need to have some language in there that we can actually, that isn't so ambiguous that we can't enforce it. And I know Nancy thought that the previously used materials was vague or ambiguous, and it might be, but it's a lot more specific than not having that language in there. I'm fine if you guys want to specify what materials have to be made of. I guess I wouldn't want my neighbor to put a chicken wire fence next to me either. But like Kelsey said, once you start doing that, we're anticipating then what materials people are going to try to build fences out of before we get there. And I'm not sure that that's a bad thing to do, but.
Thoughts?
Chairman,
Sean?
I think Nancy wanted to say something, but
Okay.
Larry, we got a little bit of time. I mean, if the planning commission wants to hold us over till next month, I mean, we don't have to have another hearing or anything. We can just hold over just the recommendation, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
I have a quick question.
Eric, can you hang on for a minute? Nancy had her hand up first,
Yep.
so thank you.
So having initiated the conversation, I really am glad because number one, I am very supportive of rewriting this language because I'm kind of tired of coming to planning commission meetings and listening to neighbors yell at each other about the height. So I think that the height is a very good thing. Having had Charlie explain the background on not using previously used materials, I think in hindsight now, it's vague, but at the same time, I think it will trigger a homeowner to say, well, what does that mean? Explain it. And then at that point, then we have the opportunity to clarify, and that might be a better way rather than putting a lot of materials in there. This is going to go forward for a number of years. Let's just be honest. We don't know what they're going to be making materials for fences out of. Nobody thought it was going to be plastic a number of years ago. So that gives some room for explanation of what's going to be acceptable, I would think.
Well, what we could do here is close the public hearing, and then I could take a look at this and come back with a couple of options for the planning commission to consider.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Eric had a question here too. I want to make sure we hear it, so.
Yeah, I guess my question is that, I mean, a building permit's required for a fence, correct?
No, a building permit is not required. A zoning permit is required.
So before they can build anything, they have to come in with a plan.
Yes.
Say, hey, I'm building this. And then we approve
Right,
that or not approve that.
Right, but unless we have something in our ordinance that says you can or cannot do that,
Yeah.
we have to approve their plan.
Okay. So, thank you, Eric. Any other questions? So I'm good with holding this over. I don't think we need a motion on that. We'll just do that. But I do have one suggestion looking at item 5 there, Larry and Charlie and Kelsey. It says barbed wire fences. I would suggest looking at just prohibiting all wire fences, and then you can list barbed wire, chicken wire, and whatever other kind of wire, because wire just seems to me to be, I don't want electric either. I think wire just seems to me to be dangerous, in any case. So one single strand of wire, at height for a snowmobiler would certainly be potentially deadly. So would you consider that, please, as you give us options?
Yes.
All right. Thank
Would
you.
Can I say something? Would you specify that not to include chain link or cable?
Well, I think we were gonna, I'm not sure who made that remark.
Chris.
Chris. Okay. Well, I was thinking chain link was allowed already.
Right,
in
but
this
when you say wire, you can misconstrue what that is as well. I mean,
Yep.
I think when you specify too much, you can create other problems.
Yeah,
Right. Well, and that's why I'm just asking that the staff take a look at that. So if you can't differentiate between chain link and wire, of course we couldn't do it, but that's a good
Right,
point,
but
Chris.
I'm talking like cable as well,
I guess one of the things we would want to consider is if we would want to see cable fences around town. So,
Okay, so for an example, have you seen like on a deck guardrail where you use cable instead of other materials?
You're talking like the stranded cable, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen that done quite tastefully in those environments.
okay. Well, it's a thought anyway. I'd like the city staff to consider, and if we can't differentiate, then maybe we need to leave that out. So, it's hoping to address the chicken wire
I think
issue.
there's a difference between wire and chain link.
Well, and then cable falls in there too was the problem. So where does that fall? So,
But I think you raised a good question. Do we want to see fences made of cable? A deck railing is not a fence.
No, I was just using that as an example.
yeah, personally, I would like to stay away from cable, but I don't know how the other commissioners feel on that.
We can come up with some options there too. So,
okay. All right. Well, I guess I'm going to close the public hearing. We're not going to take any action on this. Okay, and we will consider it at next month's meeting again. Thank you, everybody, for your comments on this. And the last thing I would just say on it is one reason that the city has an interest in this is fences are certainly available from the street, and we do want to have our city to have a pleasing experience without becoming overly prescriptive. So thank you. So with that, we'll move on and open another public hearing on item 3B, which is the subdivision ordinance. And we're going to look at allowing developers to construct public improvements. Larry, can you fill us in on this?
yes, in the past, we have allowed developers to construct their own public improvements if they chose to, provided they met all of the city's requirements. In looking at our ordinance, though, it seemed a little bit unclear as to whether or not the language in our ordinance permitted this. And so in order to make sure that we have that allowed, we wanted to propose some amendments to the ordinance, and those are the amendments that are before you in the ordinance draft.
Okay. Questions on this from questions on this? Okay, hearing no questions, I'm going to close the public hearing and look for a motion. Anybody care to make a motion on this?
This is Sean.
Sorry, Sean, this is Liz. I'll make a motion to approve the zoning ordinance related to general contractors and as presented.
Thank you, Liz.
This is Sean. I'll
Second.
second that.
Thank you, Sean. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on this? Okay, hearing no discussion, I'll call the question, and do the roll call vote. Nancy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Eric,
Aye.
Chris? You're still on mute, Chris. There you go. Gotcha. Liz?
Aye.
Thank you. Marcus?
Aye.
Marcus, there you go. And Sean?
Aye.
Thank you. And the chair votes aye. So motion passes. So we've covered all of the items in 3 and 4. Good work, everybody. Anything you want to cover on the variance conditional use status report, Larry?
No, I have nothing to add. It's just there for your information, unless anybody has a question.
Okay. Anything else that needs to come before the planning commission tonight?
Nothing tonight.
Okay, and if I recall, I can just adjourn a meeting without asking for a motion. Is that correct? Or
That is correct.
then I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody. Looking forward to next month. Hopefully soon we'll be in person again. So thank you very much. Good job.
Good night.
Good night.
Aye.
Right.